Hello and welcome to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and your Philadelphia Union have bounced back from last weekend's loss to Nashville to defeat St. Louis City 1-0 in the Bradley Carnell and Indiana Vasilev derby. And it wasn't as cold as I thought it was going to be at Subaru Park, and maybe that's because of Union coming out firing on all cylinders in the first half and seeing the Union, I don't want to say get robbed, but Ben Lund definitely played out of his mind last night against Philadelphia and kept St. Louis in the match all night. And then obviously we get to the second half where I feel like was probably the most boring Union game I feel like we've had in a while. Just looking at the second half performance, just with 3 shots each, I think each team had. Neither goalkeeper was really tested. You had Jakob Glesnes at the start of the second half try that long range shot from the center circle. And so, yeah, I think that pretty much sums up the second half. And then obviously you have Leuven for St. Louis City pick up a second yellow card, a stupid yellow card that he picked up, I should add, for kicking the ball away after the referee had blew the whistle. And, you know, I thought maybe there was a moment there where, okay, you could see this potentially coming back and haunting the Union for not capitalizing on their chances in the first half. And could that potentially lead to the Union potentially conceding the equalizing goal? And to their credit last night, nope, the Union defense, they held strong, and the Union come out with a 1-0 victory, and it's down to Miami this upcoming weekend. And I'm not going to lie, guys, feels a little bit strange, as you guys can see. We're almost 3 minutes into the podcast. I haven't brought any guests in. I haven't told you guys, yeah, we have a guest coming in, because we don't have anybody tonight. This is a first time in a long time solo episode from me, going back to my old roots, so to say, with Jose traveling back from Seattle, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody has read Jose's match recap or match report from the Chicago Fire Vancouver Whitecaps game, but another outstanding article from Jose on MLSsoccer.com. Shout out Jose, and we'll see. Do we get Jose on for Into Miami? Maybe not. But regardless, yeah, this St. Louis City game, good result for the Union. And I'm going to need you guys' help tonight with the comments coming in live on YouTube and on Twitter, as we are always broadcasting live. And so I appreciate just you guys always checking in every single episode whenever we go live. And I did want to mention one more thing. So we're at 293, and this is the last time I'll plug something and ask for you guys to go ahead and do me a favor. But we're at 293 subscribers on YouTube. And I give a shout out to Union Reddit a couple weeks ago, and everybody on there just kept recommending the podcast, and because of that, the subscribers on YouTube had kept going up and up and up. So I want to make it a goal to get to 500 subscribers by the end of this 2025 MLS season. I do think it's possible. With your guys' help, we can definitely get there. So for all the support you guys are giving me, I appreciate that. Ricky says Todd looks lonely. Yeah, a little bit, right? A little bit awkward doing a solo show and live too. I think this is the first time I'm doing a solo show live. Maybe not, but yeah, absolutely love the support. A lot of good comments coming in here from you guys. I'll bring them up. Shaggy says St. Louis keeper was insane with some of those saves. Absolutely, and I'm sure we'll talk about his performance more so tonight. Lexi Boom Boom says it was crazy to see Nate in the midfield. Yeah, Lexi, stay tuned, because I have comments from Bradley Carnell and Nathan Harriel coming up about Nathan Harriel playing as one of the 210s in the formation last night. Shaggy says, considering the circumstances, love that lineup. And I guess, you know, that's probably going to be the point that we come up here soon with Shaggy talking about the lineup. But yeah, I thought when I started the show talking about the Union dominating St. Louis in the first half, they outshot St. Louis 15-2, which was an insane performance by the Philadelphia Union there. We talked about Ben Lund keeping St. Louis in the game. He finished the game with 8 saves, and spoiler alert, get a pick for MLS Player of the Match Day. I get 2 picks, actually, with being in NSAR. So I did put Ben Lute as my second choice. I thought he had a fantastic game, and I forget who I picked for number one. But yeah, even though St. Louis lost, there's no reason why St. Louis should have been in that game for as long as they were, other than the goalkeeping. Outstanding goalkeeper that Ben Lute was on the night. You go ahead and look. I thought this was probably a must-win game for the Union, and I had said this on AAT Sports' Across the Pitch last night with Mike Barrera and Kyle Almany. If you guys haven't checked out that episode, I'll go ahead and leave a link to the show description. As always, common reminder for you guys that Mike and Across the Pitch go live every single game, post-game show, and so fortunately, lucky enough, Mike said, "Hey, come join me," and shout out to Mike for holding down that show for like 35 minutes until Kyle and I got done with player interviews, Bradley Carnell's press conference, and we were able to join Mike and close it out from the cafeteria in Subaru Park. But yeah, I thought this was a must-win game for the Union because they have Inter Miami this upcoming weekend. Then they have Orlando City at home. Then they go away at New York City, and then they come back to Subaru Park against Atlanta United. And this schedule doesn't get easier for the Union. You lose a game against Nashville where, I don't know if you guys saw this, and this probably should be blunder of the week. Pro referees came out and said that the referees got both penalty calls that went against the Union, and then the penalty given on Hani Mukhtar. They said both of those were the incorrect calls. And if you guys listened to last week's goals breakdown video, I had actually said that Hani Mukhtar, the challenge by Jakob Glesnes was a penalty. I thought Glesnes was late, but I guess that's the reason why I'm not a referee. And pro referees come out and say, yeah, the referees dropped the ball on that one. Doesn't do the Union any favors. But yeah, with dropping that game against Nashville last week, I thought this was a must-win game. And the Union do take care of business. But again, I mean, you're short-handed because of all the players away on international duty. Aluatu Makanya is out with a red card. Marcus Anderson, he's pretty much a non-factor. He's been injured the whole season, dealing with an ankle injury, and it is a little bit fortunate for Marcus to, be injured, because I think this would have been an opportunity for him to get into the starting match day squad. You saw Stas Kazanowski, I'm probably pronouncing that last name incorrectly, sign a short-term call-up from Union 2 to be on the bench last night for the Union. He was the 2024 53rd pick in the Super Draft, I believe it was. And so I think that could have been a role that Marcus Anderson would have been in place for if he would have been healthy. And unfortunately for him, he's not been healthy this season. And so Stas takes advantage of an opportunity, makes the match day squad, doesn't come in. But yeah, it's a big honor for him to sign a Union 2 contract this season after having an outstanding career at Penn. And yeah, finds himself on the Union match day squad 5 games into the season. And we'll see if he comes up and has any more opportunities, maybe US Open Cup, who knows? We'll see what the Union do with that competition here in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, the Union took care of business. They needed to take care of business against St. Louis City, and it wasn't the prettiest of games. It was sloppy at times, but it doesn't matter. 3 points is 3 points. However you get 3 points, Bradley Carnell and that coaching staff and the players are going to be happy with that. And yeah, the first half, the Union should have had multiple goals, but goalkeeping kept St. Louis in the match all game long. Bruce chiming in here says, great all-around team performance. Glesnes was a beast. Also, great surprise in my season tickets today with the additional game against Eintracht Frankfurt. That's a good reminder too, Bruce. So I don't know if Union fans saw this, but August 2nd, I believe the date is. Somebody in the comments, correct me if I'm wrong. The Union, one of the free games that season ticket members get is a friendly against Frankfurt, which could see the potential return of Paxton Aronson during the summertime for Frankfurt, unless he gets sent down on loan again. But I think that should be a pretty interesting match to see a pretty high level German team come in here as they get ready for the Bundesliga season. So I would imagine that you would probably see some of their star players as they want to get up to match fitness. But again, don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But yeah, Jakob Glesnes, Bruce, fantastic on the night. Ricky says, if Glavinovich gets 90 minutes, who are the two starters after how he has looked? We'll get to that in a second, Ricky. I'll store that comment so I don't forget. Shaggy says, agreed, must win with Miami coming up. I appreciate that. Shaggy also says, has Damiani done enough to start over Ua? I think so. Again, another great comment. We'll talk about that in a minute. Ricky says, I imagine unlike Jim subs, if they had scored a second goal, we would have seen more than two subs. Interesting that Rafa was first off the bench when he's apparently not better than Kevin to be in the 20. Also an interesting point, right? That Jeremy Raffanello makes his first appearance on the season, the first substitution, as Ricky points out there. And yeah, we had seen Kevin Sullivan the last few weeks be in the starting match day squad or be in the match day squad ahead of Jeremy Raffanello. And yeah, because of circumstances, you see Raffanello in there, which, by the way, I think one thing that surprised me looking at the starting lineup, I thought Alejandro Bedoya was going to be a lock to start this game. I thought there's no way that Bedoya doesn't play in this game. You could play him as one of the 10s. You can go ahead and play as one of the 6s. And instead, no Bedoya in the matchday squad. And so that raised a lot of questions. I know myself and other people, other media members were trying to get answers. And I believe Matt DeGeorge eventually did get an answer from someone. And they said, yeah, Bradley Carnell will address that after the game. We did get a comment from Bradley Carnell, and he said, yeah, Bedoya had a family commitment. Now, whether or not Union fans want to believe that or not, that's up to you guys. I'd seen some people say that Bedoya was at his brother's wedding, which would check out, right? You only get, hopefully, one wedding, and that's a pretty big deal for any family. And so I could see why, if that is true, why Bedoya would want to show up for that. But again, I think that this could have been a game that Alejandro Bedoya would have potentially started just with so many players away. Lexi says, we really need to win against Miami to put a gap between us and them. Yeah, the Union are in first place right now. They played one more game than Miami, but yeah, that game against Miami will be pretty important. Shaggy says, who had the Union with 12 points out of the first 5 games? Not me, but I'm loving it. Yeah, this team full of surprises, right? I mean, you start the season 3-0, drop one against Nashville, get out coached by BJ Callahan, I would say. And yes, I know, don't want to rehash old topics, but referee decisions go against the Union, and unfortunately, you see, the Union drop a hard one, and then they come back against St. Louis in a must-win game, like I had started off saying. Shaggy also says Bedoya was Jim's boy. Indiana has taken that spot under Carnell. Absolutely. But another player I would say that's taken that spot under Bradley Carnell is Frankie Westfield. Frankie Westfield obviously away on international duty, which paved the way for Olivier Bizot to start this match. And we'll get to Nathan Harriel starting in such a unique position here in a bit. But I think those two players, absolutely, Shaggy. Indy Vassilev obviously comes over from St. Louis City. And then Frankie Westfield, prior to going away on international duty, had started the first 4 games of the season. Now, granted, Nathan Harriel had missed all of preseason, played 90 minutes against New England Revolution 2 with Union 2 weeks ago, plays 25 minutes last week against Nashville, and then obviously plays the 90 minutes against St. Louis. But Frankie Westfield's definitely earned his spot. I don't want to take anything away from Frankie Westfield, and I mentioned Olivier Bizot. I'll bring him up here in a little bit because I'm sure the next topic that we talk about with the depth pieces stepping up when they needed to step up. A lot of questions, I think, a lot of good questions, but yeah, you see a lot of players step up, and I guess let's go ahead and just talk about that, where the lineup was so surprising with you see Nathan Harriel. It looked like he was going to be one of the 3 center backs, and I had a lot of questions. I said, why are we going with 3 in the back with Ian Glavinovich and Nathan Harriel, and then Bizot and Wagner as the 2 wingbacks? But then when this game starts, that wasn't the case at all. The Union stick with their 4-2-2 formation and play Nathan Harriel as one of the 2 6s, which was a huge shock. Olivier Bizot getting a start maybe a little bit of a shock too. I would have expected Nathan Harriel to be the starting right back, but and Bradley Carnell talked about how Nathan Harriel actually was key to stopping how St. Louis City wanted to play, how they've been playing this season. I'll play that clip here in a bit, but again, just going back to how the Union started the first half in this game, outshot St. Louis City 15-2 in the first half, finished the game with 18 shots, which was the second most that the Union have had on the season so far. They had 19 against New England Revolution a few weeks ago, which oddly enough, too, both of those games where the Union took 18 or more shots wind up seeing the Union have a clean sheet. Andrew Rick gets his second career clean sheet, first of the season, filling in for Andre Blake, who's away on international duty, which I don't even have it in front of me when Jamaica plays again. But all the players, I saw some people talking about this on social media, asking, will the players be back for the Inter Miami game? All players from international duty will be available for that Miami game. Fingers crossed nobody gets injured while away on international duty. But yeah, I mean, pretty much going to have a full strength Union squad against Inter Miami. I know there's question marks surrounding Messi got injured. A abductor injury was that he suffered last week against Atlanta United. I think I put that in my match report. I can't remember. Somebody in the comments remind me of what Messi's injury was, or I can try to pull that up here. Yeah, abductor muscle injury against Atlanta United last weekend. But yeah, I mean, just so many people stepping up, and players did need to step up. And again, I saw comments from you guys tonight talking about Jakob Glesnes having a big game, Nathan Harriel having a big game, and we'll talk about them separately here in a bit. But you see Bruno Damiani get the first start of the season. Andy Vasilev, Andrew Rick, as I mentioned, Ian Glavinovich, Harriel Bizo, they all make their first start in this season. And on paper, this is the deepest squad that they've had in a while. And this was a big opportunity for players to step up and prove that they should be pushing for a starting 11 role. And I think that's a good situation for Bradley Carnell to have, right? He talks about players being brave, pushing each other. Competition's good for the squad. And last night, when you see an Indiana Vasilev, who was a mainstay during Bradley Carnell's time in St. Louis City, Bruno Damiani, it's only a matter of time before he starts starting regularly. The comment that came in from Shaggy, I think it was, right, where you had mentioned should Bruno start starting, and I'd imagine with Ty Bariba is who you're going with, and I think that's who everybody in the comment section would agree should be starting is Ty Bariba and Damiani. But Bruno looked pretty deadly. Good hold-up play last night. Got himself in some really good opportunities. Was unfortunate not to get a goal last night. Again, Ben Lund played out of his mind for St. Louis City. For St. Louis City, yeah. Why did I think I said Cincinnati? St. Louis City. And yeah, I mean, I think there is a real possibility that he should start against Miami just because of how well he played against St. Louis last night. Union have 72 shots on the season, which is tied for the third most in MLS. 31 shots on target, which is the most in MLS. They average 43.1 shots on target per game, which is the third most in MLS. And so the point I'm trying to make is this is a team that creates a lot of chances. They had 18 shots last night, and for a team that was missing 7 players on international duty, 1 player because of a red card, players stepped up when they needed to. And now that makes Bradley Carnell's starting 11s even more difficult because, Ricky, I think you had mentioned the comment, and again, comments are coming in. A lot of them. I appreciate you guys helping me get through the show, doing a solo show. But what does a Bradley Carnell do with Makania being available against Inter Miami? Jan playing as well as he did against St. Louis last night. Jakob Glesnes having his best game in the season, maybe his best game since he won Defender of the Year back in 2022. I mean, it's good decisions and choices for Bradley Carnell to make and have. Eric says, I'm glad Rick got the clean sheet, but he really wasn't tested much. No, he wasn't. Only 5 shots in this game by St. Louis. Rick only had to make 1 save. But again, that talks about how well Jan and Jakob Glesnes played on the night. Andy Vasilev and Jovan Lukic playing as the 2-6s. And yeah, I mean, I think it would have been fair to ask, okay, what's this team going to look like with Stanley John Jock away on international duty? In Indiana, Vasilev filled in seamlessly with Ian Glavinovich. Brendan says, it felt like we were in a diamond with Nate on the right on the diamond. And I do agree with that. In moments in the game, it did seem like the Union were playing that way. But if you watch, Nathan Harriel was playing pretty wide a good majority of that game, as was Quinn Sullivan. You didn't really have anybody controlling as a 10 in this game. You're always going to have your strikers drop in. Comment was Harriel 6 or an attacking midfielder? Definitely an attacking midfielder. I feel like I'm definitely going out of order here with these comments. Again, lots of comments coming, and I'm appreciate it, guys. And if I'm missing your comments, that's definitely on me. Bizer's a guy, number 3, and massive trade bait. And I'm glad you brought that up, Ricky, because I thought Olivier Bizer had a good game. And I said this last night on Across the Pitch, where if Olivier Bizo has a quiet evening, if you're not talking about him, then that tells you that he's doing his job. That's what you want with Olivier Bizo. Because I feel like so many times in the past when we're talking about Bizo, it's because he's making mistakes. Yes, he's had moments like against Nashville last season away, where him and Bedoya, I believe it was, or him and Sullivan combined on the right-hand side with Julian Kranza scoring the go-ahead goal, a game-tying goal. I can't remember now, but he had a big moment there. And of course, we're talking about Olivier Bizo doing something positive. But more times than not, when people mention Olivier Bizo, it's because he's done something negative. But it brings up the point. Once Frankie Westfield comes back from international duty, I do believe he is one of Bradley Carnell's guys. Does he go straight into that starting 11 again, or does it go to Nathan Harriel? Nathan Harriel, we know, has been a staple the last few years under former manager Jim Curtin. But does Bradley Carnell feel the same way? He plays Nathan Harriel in a different formation. I don't think we'll see Nathan play that position going forward. But it is interesting to see that, okay, Bradley Carnell has enough trust in Nathan to play him in a spot that he's never played in before. Eric says, Bizo definitely showed that he shouldn't be a starter and instead come off the bench as needed. And I think that's a fair point, Eric. I think that's always been the case with Bizo, where if you're down a goal, if you're chasing a goal, have Bizo come off the bench. And he's good going forward. He has pace. He can beat you on the dribble. Defending has always been his biggest question mark. And yeah, maybe Olivier Bizo still does have a role in this team. Maybe it's more so coming off the bench. And don't forget, the Union had signed Olivier Bizo to a contract extension last season towards the end of the year. I believe he signed through 2026. I don't have the contracts in front of me. When I have the first clip, I'll go ahead and look that up. But regardless, you have 3, I would say, starting capable right backs on this roster right now. And do you really need 3 starting right backs? Yes, Nathan Harriel is pretty versatile, where he can play as a left back, he can play as a center back, and apparently as a number 10 now. So maybe you do still keep on a Olivier Bizo. But if the Union get a good enough trade offer, then I think that you got to consider potentially trading him if the offer is good enough. But going back just to the depth stepping up for this team, 10 assists the Union have in MLS, which is the second most. That's tied. They're tied with Chicago Fire for the second most goals, 12. And again, I mean, they created chances last night. And whether it be in Indiana Vasilev, Jovan Lukic continues to create chances for this team. Kai Wagner is always going to create chances. Bruno Damiani created chances. Mikael Uhre. I mean, every single player stepped up in the attack. And I know, I mean, looking at just a 1-0 game, you would say, well, maybe the Union didn't create a lot, but that's not the case at all. I mean, the goalkeeping again, and that's been something I feel like I've talked about half this episode. It was that good last night. A guy who's going to be seeing a few more games for St. Louis City because Roman Berkey's out with that fractured hand. And it didn't look like St. Louis City were missing much in the goalkeeping department. But so I can go ahead and take a drink of water and catch my breath here. I'm going to go ahead and play this first clip. This was Bradley Carnell talking about the depth stepping up on the night and how the Union just continued to keep creating chances the last few weeks.
There was some good combinations happening. I thought we could create a little bit in transition as we did, and some service from Kai, or whether it was over the right hand side from Mbaizo. Also, I think we had some really nice moments. And again, listen, we've been creating a lot over the last couple of weeks, and we've shown this with one stack of players, and now we showed it tonight with another set of players. So, I'm just happy that we are continuing to create and play fluid, attacking football, and I'm enjoying every process with the guys, and it was fun to watch.
And so I looked it up. Olivier Bizo is signed through 2026 with options for 2027, 2028. So, yeah, I mean, if the Union were potentially to trade Olivier Bizo, a team that's going to take on that contract knows that, hey, look, we have him signed through essentially a year and a half, and then we have 2 option years if a team wanted to take that. I'll be curious to see what his numbers come out at in spring once the MLSPA releases the salary guide. But yeah, Bradley Carnell pretty much talks about it right there and loves to see what this team's creating. And they've been creating nonstop. And yes, 1 goal is the fewest amount of goals that they've scored this season. They did it last week as well against Nashville, but it's not like this team isn't creating chances. And I think this would be a completely different topic, a completely different discussion where, okay, are you guys concerned that it's been back weeks that the Union have only scored 1 goal after starting the season, scoring 4 against Orlando City? They scored 4 against Cincinnati, and they now score back-to-back 1 goals in these last 2 weeks. And I don't think that that's a concern because they are creating chances. Nashville, they didn't create too much, but they had opportunities. But yeah, it was just good goalkeeping this week against St. Louis City for the Union. Ricky had mentioned Raffanello making his appearance off the bench. We had talked about, a lot of choices now for Bradley Carnell in that starting 11, but yeah, all in all, you'd love to see, not much of a drop off from the regular starting 11 compared to the players that played last night coming off the bench, which players coming off the bench and actually making their first start of the season. You guys have mentioned him all night long. That is Nathan Harriel shining in a unique role. Again, I talked about it a little bit where I thought that Nate was going to be one of the 3 center backs and winds up being the second number 10 in this formation. And I thought Nathan Harriel was fantastic. Has to have been the first time that he's ever played that position ever in his career. And even when Jeremy Raffanello came off the bench and Ian Glavinovich came off, Nathan Harriel then switched to left center back, and Raffanello went to one of those 2 10s. And you have so much versatility in Nathan Harriel. And yeah, I think there was moments, and Quinn Sullivan talked about this, where Nate wasn't always up to speed with the pressing cues. He would press when he wasn't supposed to press. It was supposed to be a striker pressing, but that's to be expected for a player that's never played this position before. He's still getting caught up to speed with his team. He's normally a right back, and the pressing cues are a little bit different than what they were under Jim Curtin. But I don't think Nathan Harriel had a bad game at all. I think Nathan Harriel was probably one of the best players on the night. And yeah, he had a couple shots too, right? So Nathan Harriel is always going to be dangerous on set pieces. He's always going to be a great defender. But the one thing too that Bradley Carnell talked about is Nate played because of his speed. St. Louis City want to play out of the back. They want to go ahead and just play down the channels. And you bring in a natural defender in Nathan Harriel, a quick player in Nathan Harriel. He's going to go ahead and shut down some of those attacks. And that's exactly what we saw throughout the night. And Eric says right here, he says, they should have scored up a man, but we also had Dono and no Baribo. So I kind of get that. Yeah, exactly. Going back to the depth, stepping up. But again, I don't want to take anything away from the goalkeeper. I mean, Damiani had a chance. Uwa had a chance last night. There was so many chances that the Union could have scored, but it was good goalkeeping. Last time I mentioned goalkeeping. Harriel in a unique role, that defensive attacking midfielder. Yeah, you're right. I mean, so weird that playing as one of the 210s, you want to be more the creative player. You want to be staying out wide. You want to have those good combination plays like we see with a Daniel Gaza, with a Quinn Sullivan. But it really wasn't the case with Nathan Harriel. I mean, he was truly in there as a defender to close down the ball quickly, and he knew his role and he did it well. And in my match recap that I wrote, I had included audio and the quote from Nathan Harriel talking about, he just did his role. And he said, there's, at the end of the day, wherever you get played, there's no excuses to make, whether or not you're playing a different position or not. Talked about how it's nice to know that Bradley Carnell trusts him, and in his second game back too with the first team this season. And I think that speaks highly of where Bradley Carnell rates Nathan Harriel to say, hey, look, I'm going to start you over a Kevin Sullivan, over a Jeremy Raffanello, more attacking players, more players that I think would be suited to play as that second number 10. But again, Bradley Carnell knew what St. Louis City's strengths were, and he wanted to go ahead and do everything he could to take those away. And Nathan Harriel also talked about after the game, he said, we watch a lot of film, which I feel like is typical in the sport. But the way that he was talking about it makes it seem like this is the most that he's ever watched in his game, his life. And it's interesting because when you're watching that much film, when you are getting all this information on your opponents, and sometimes I think that it could be a little bit overkill, but when a plan's executed as well as Nathan Harriel executed the plan that Bradley Carnell wanted, then it kind of makes Bradley Carnell and his coaching staff look like a genius, does it not? But again, I mean, Nathan Harriel was fantastic on the night, and I'll go ahead and play the second clip here about Nathan Harriel's performance according to Bradley Carnell and just what he saw overall from Nate at the number 10 position.
Nate serves a dual purpose. He's excellent in the air for set pieces. And then also just his ability and repeater sprintability, I would say. And knowing, how St. Louis want to build up and how they want to play the game. I thought it was a perfect scenario for him. And he emptied the tank. He committed to a lot. I think he had insane numbers in terms of his running data. And credit to him. He's been working hard to get back into full fitness. So happy for him and his performance.
Yeah, so I mean, everything that I pretty much summed up to you guys there. I mean, just the sprinting data off the charts for Nathan Harriel. And again, you had talked about it, Ricky. I mean, did the Union potentially trade Olivier Bizo? And I don't know. I mean, you have three arguably starting capable right backs in this league. Yes, Nathan can play in multiple positions, like I said. But yeah, I mean, it was a good game from Nathan Harriel, and good to see him execute a position that he's never played before in his career. Another player that I thought that executed well last night, and you guys again brought him up, is Jakob Glesnes. He bounces back from that Nashville performance where, yeah, he was involved in all three goals that Nashville scored on the night. And I mentioned it a little bit ago that this was a performance that showed me and maybe showed some of you guys that this is why Jakob Glesnes won Defender of the Year back in 2022. And I think this was probably his best performance since those performances back in 2022. Can Jakob Glesnes stay at that level? It's yet to be determined, but I do think that it's a good bounce back for him. And especially when you have no Jakob Glesnes, you have no Alejandro Bedoya, you have no your two captains. And so Jakob Glesnes usually was the second captain last year for the Union when it wasn't a Alejandro Bedoya or an Andre Blake. And you needed veteran players to step up. You needed Jakob Glesnes to step up and be a great communicator for a Ian Glavinovich who was making his first start this season. Yes, I know that they had partnered each other throughout preseason and whatnot, and so they did have a little bit of chemistry coming into this game. But Jakob Glesnes really needed to have a strong game. And just going back and rewatching the game, and even watching the game live, maybe some of you guys didn't go back and rewatch the game. And in my goals breakdown video, I jokingly and said that this is pretty much the Jakob Glesnes and Ben Lewitt highlight video instead of goals breakdown, because St. Louis City had a game plan coming in. They wanted to attack Jakob Glesnes. They try to play long balls. They try to play through balls and try to get the forwards onto those balls. But Jakob was in the right position all night long. He's not the quickest guy, but he read the game so well last night. His positioning was top notch, whether it be interceptions, tackles, aerial duels won. He was really, really solid on the night, and he needed to be. He absolutely needed to be. And there's no moments in my mind that stick out that were too concerning from Jakob Glesnes. Yes, he had a moment, I believe it was in the first half, where he gets to the ball, he kicks it towards his corner flag, but he chases it down, keeps it in play, tries to pass the ball to Kai Wagner. It's a bad pass, and fortunately, nothing comes of it. Then in the second half, it's a ball played over the top. Glesnes wins the header. It's a bad header. The St. Louis City attacker wins the ball, and then Glesnes goes and slide tackles, wins the ball back, plays it up for it to Mikael Uhre, and Mikael Uhre eventually wins a free kick for the Union. Actually, both plays, now that I'm thinking about it, were in the second half because St. Louis attacked the river end in the second half. But yeah, I mean, overall, Jakob Glesnes was really solid on the night. Shaggy says, back-to-back home games where the wind played a factor. I wonder how much that wind affected Quinn's shot that hit the crossbar. It's a good point, too. Quinn Sullivan came close in the first half, where probably should have made it 2-0. And yeah, free kicks are so hard to score, right? But maybe the wind did play a little bit of a factor, I think, and probably played a factor in both teams not being able to play as many long balls as they wanted to. Kai Wagner's crosses weren't great on the night. I think he was 2 for 12 or something like that. Again, somebody can correct me in the chat if they want to. But overall, I think a really, really solid night by Jakob Glesnes. Eric says, with 7 players out, I do think a lot of questions from the all-season have finally been answered. Depth. And it seems like the hate Ernst got was unwarranted. He kind of looks genius at this point. Let's hope it continues. And yeah, exactly. And you guys are probably tired of me talking about this. I've talked about it so many times with Jose Nunez on the show, but so many fans are saying, well, why couldn't the Union have done this a few seasons ago or a few transfer windows ago? They couldn't. They didn't have the roster flexibility. But you have so many contracts that came off the book this past season. Jack Elliott, Leon Flock, Jose Martinez, Julian Kranza, Joaquin Torres also opened up an international spot. It allowed you to go out and make these signings that you needed to make. And more importantly, signing players that fit into a style of play. We've talked about how well Danley John Jock and Jovan Lukic have looked as the 2 number 6s. Ty Baribo, we saw it last year once he started starting for Julian Kranza. It's you guys were saying it. Why wasn't he playing more when Julian was still here? The Union needed a third striker, a third starting capable striker, and you had it in Ty Baribo all along, but he wasn't given his chances because, again, we heard that apparently he wasn't living up to the standards in practice. Oluwatu Makanya, who I still think is raw, but you're seeing why Ernst Tanner signed him 2 seasons ago. He's still only 20 years old, right? And so he's going to make mistakes like he did against Nashville, throwing the ball at Jacob Schaffelberg, but more times than not, he's answering the call. And yeah, he had shaky moments last year for Union too. And, you expect that with a young defender, but more times than not, it looks like the Union finally have depth. They finally have players that fit into the system, the style of play that Bradley Carnell and Ernst Tanner want to play. And you have players that want to go ahead and just understand the role that's expected of them. That's what Indiana Vasilev told me last weekend when I talked to him, that, look, this coaching staff is so good at communicating, whether you're a starter, whether you're coming off the bench, whether you're a player that doesn't even play in the match, you know your role because this coaching staff communicates so well with you. And that goes such a long way. And that's not a knock on Jim Curtin. I think Jim Curtin was a great communicator. Jim Curtin was a player's coach. But we all know that Jim Curtin had his guys. And if you weren't one of Jim Curtin's guys, you're going in the doghouse. Hello, Andres Pereira. Chris says, with our tactics, are we leaving Glesnes too exposed and requiring him to have heroic game? No, I think yes, this is a style of play with Union are playing a high line. They're playing the sixes pretty high up, and you're asking your defenders to play a lot of 1v1 defending. And Jakob Glesnes isn't the quickest player, as I just mentioned, and of course he's going to get exposed at time. But tonight it seemed like, or last night it seemed like he knew exactly where to be. He was a step ahead of the attackers all night long. And so I do think if Jakob Glesnes can continue to play at that style of play, if he can play at that, I don't want to call it a 10 out of 10 performance, but it certainly was an 8 out of 10 performance, right? A 9 out of 10 performance. I don't think he was a 10 out of 10 because I feel like you need to get a goal in there to be that good. But yeah, I do think, if Jakob can just read the game as well as he did last night and be a couple steps ahead of the attackers, then, I don't think those tactics are going to be too much of a factor. It's a high risk, high reward when you play this high press system. We saw it under Jim Curtin when they would play high press. And yes, we all know that they got away from that the last couple of seasons, but you want to quickly win the ball back in the defensive half. That means you're pushing players up for it. And if you win the ball back in the opposition's half of the field, then you hope to capitalize on a quick chance. If not, then you're seeing players sprint back, and that's when you get caught out of position. How many times do we see that happen with Jack Elliott, Jakob Glesnes, Jose Martinez just tracking back out of position, and the other teams have a 3v2, a 4v3 attacking advantage, and more times than not, the Union would get called out because they would lose possession, they would miss tackles. But if Jakob can play where he's reading the game as well as he did, if he can be a couple steps ahead of the attacker, then I think he'll be fine going forward. Shaggy says one of Jim's greatest failures will always be having Anderson Donovan over Baribo. Again, I feel like that's been talked about so much, and I see that comment all the time on social media, and there's no denying that whatsoever. Shaggy also says, asking again, but was there an explanation of the dust-up between Carnell and St. Louis player after the game? And well, Shaggy, it's like what Blunder of the Week's going to be. Spoiler alert, Bradley Carnell did not want to talk about the incident with João Klauss. Cole mentioned no, Carnell declined to comment. But yeah, I mean, an interesting moment there at the end of the game. Again, we'll save that for Blunder of the Week. But all in all, Jakob Glesnes was fantastic on the night. And this is what Bradley Carnell had to say about Jakob's performance compared last week against Nashville to now this game against St. Louis City.
Jakob's committed to this process, and he was excellent tonight, and he was a true leader. He played with passion and pride, and you could see he wanted to right something that he thought went wrong last week. So I'm proud of him, as I am the whole group.
Yeah, again, just trusting the process. I think that's going to be one of the key phrases, or committed to the process, is something that we're going to hear throughout this whole season and however long Bradley Carnell's in town as the Union head coach. But it is clear that Bradley Carnell has a style of play that he wants to play. And, if you show willingness to play it, then he's going to pick you. And so far, Jakob Glesnes, does a high press system suit his style of play? Probably not. But big performance from him last night, nonetheless. All right, so as we get ready to... Oh, wait, I did actually have one more comment from Nathan Harriel talking about Jakob Glesnes' performance last night.
Huge. Jacob's our leader. When Ollie's not here, when Dre's not here, Jacob's the captain. And for him to come out tonight and play the way he did tonight speaks volumes to his character and the way he plays his game. We all believe in Jakob. Last weekend against Nashville just wasn't all Jacob's fault. It's a collective team. We lose together, we win together. But for him to come out tonight was huge.
Yeah, and I think that's huge there for Nathan Harriel to say, hey, look, we believe in Jakob Glesnes still. And yeah, he didn't have the best game against Nashville last week. The whole team didn't have a great game. A lot of missed chances in that game, or a few missed chances. And yeah, the referee, again, didn't do the Union any favors. But two completely different games from Jakob Glesnes, from Nashville to St. Louis. And we'll see if Jakob Glesnes can continue that performance throughout the season. And if not, going back to your guys' comments tonight, Jan played a great game last night. Macanha's been solid this season. So, you have three really solid options there at the center back. And if one guy seems like they're having a rough game, then Bradley Carnell is not going to be afraid to go to that bench and change some things out. And I will be curious to see with this game against Miami, does Bradley Carnell go back to the starting lineup that he's had the last 4 games of the season, or does he leave some guys into the lineup that he had this Saturday against St. Louis City? I do think Damiani should be in contention to start. I do think Nathan Harriel has done enough to justify being in the starting 11. As Bradley Carnell talked about, you guys know, you guys are smart people. Nathan Harriel is such a dangerous player, whether it be attacking or defending set pieces. And I do think he's one of the best defenders on this team. So a lot of tough decisions for Bradley Carnell to make with the upcoming match against Inter Miami. But let's go ahead and talk about 3 stars, and then we'll get to Blunder of the Week. Number 1, got to go to Jan. Scores a goal, plays 71, 72 minutes. I thought he was really, really well positionally, just like Jakob Glesnes. He had 3 interceptions, 2 ball recoveries, 2 out of 2 aerials, 1. Really, really good start for Jan. Should be in contention as well, in my opinion, to play down in Miami. And, you know, if Messi does play, don't you think Jan, coming from Newell's Old Boys, would want to play against the club that started Messi's career? That there would be an honor for him to start. And, you know, I think he would play with extra motivation to get the chance to say, hey, look, I played against Lionel Messi, that I played against my childhood hero, because that's what everybody from Argentina says. So, again, I think Jan played an excellent game. Number 2 on the night, Jakob Glesnes. We just got done talking about him. 2 out of 2 tackles, 1, 7 interceptions, 3 ball recoveries, 4 out of 5 ground duels, 1. Outstanding game from Jakob Glesnes. I hope for his sake that he can continue to play at this level. And it might not be every single game, but if we can see more performances like that for Jakob, then I think there will be less and less fans calling for Jakob not to be in the starting lineup. Less and less people saying, hey, look, move on from Jakob Glesnes at the end of the season. And maybe the Union do move on from Jakob Glesnes at the end of the season. Don't forget that he is only signed through 2025. He has an option for 2026. Again, the MLSPA salary guides aren't out yet. They should be out sometime in the spring. And I'll be curious to see what Jakob Glesnes' numbers at. Last year he made $1.1 million, and that's a lot of money for a center back. And with the way that Jakob had played the last couple seasons, probably hasn't justified that contract. And again, this is what happens when you have a team that did as well as the Union did back in 2022. It justifies giving players a pay raise, and when they don't live up to those expectations, then those contracts start to look pretty bad. But if Jakob can get back to the way that he played last night, then that contract doesn't start to look as bad. And then Kai Wagner, star number 3 on the night. Kai's been a solid player all season long for the Union. 1 assist, 2 chances created, 16 passes in the final third, 1 out of 1 tackles, 1 interception, 7 ball recoveries, and 2 out of 3 aerials, 1. And speaking of Kai Wagner, he has 4 assists now on the season. I think it's 5 assists if you count MLS secondary assists, but I never like including them. So 4 true assists for Kai Wagner, 3 set piece goals Union have this season. And I think that won you guys free nuggets from Chick-fil-A for people living in the Philadelphia area. Getting back to the comments, Shaggy says Damiani definitely starts, and I think Jan over Macania. Cole says Harriel in for Frankie, Jan in for Alawetu, Damiani for Uwa. Yeah, I agree 100% there, Cole. Shaggy says, yep, Damiani over Uwa def, and I believe Macania goes to the bench with Jan starting. Chris says Quinn Sullivan number 4. Yeah, Chris, I think Quinn had a really, really solid night. I'd be curious what you guys think in the comment section. Who was your player of the game last night, your top 3 players? And I joked about this on Across the Pitch. I don't know how many people in the comment section were at the Union game last night, but the Sons of Ben voted Andrew Rick as player of the match. He makes 1 save, and that's enough to justify Andrew Rick winning your player of the match. I don't know how. I mean, it 100% should have went to Jan last night. The one thing I would say, going back to your comment, Chris, about Quinn number 4, well, we all imagine that Daniel Gosling goes back into the starting lineup against Inter Miami. But you had mentioned it, Shaggy, that Indy seems to be a favorite of Bradley Carnell. They had a great relationship. My conversation with Indy, yeah, I can tell that they have a special relationship between each other. I do wonder, when does Indy start getting starts in the starting 11, playing as a number 10? He played as a 6 last night, and I would imagine that Quinn Sullivan would be the player that Indiana Vassilev would be pushing for. And again, Bradley Carnell says competition's good, and the harder these guys push each other in practice, it's going to make it that much more difficult for Bradley Carnell to choose a starting 11 week in, week out. Jillian says, Rick seemed to be telling the Sons of Ben as he left the field he only had one save. Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense to me why the Sons of Ben voted Andrew Rick as the player of the match. Cole says, in my opinion, he wasn't great against Nashville. I also, Frankie Westfield, I imagine you're talking about, Cole. I agree 100%. That's why we saw Harriel come in. I also think Harriel deserves a shot in his actual position to earn his spot back. Shaggy says, Jakob Glesnes should have been player of the game. Agreed. Ricky says, Indy wants to stay in the national team conversation as well, and that's why he left St. Louis. Yeah, and that's what Matt Baker told us, I believe, or did somebody else tell me that? I believe that was Matt Baker who told me that the last episode. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, 24 years old, you're Indiana Vassilev. Playing time was going to be pretty scarce in St. Louis, a different coach, a new system, and comes to a team in Philadelphia, knows the system, knows the coach, and wants to be in the national team conversation. And when you look at how this U.S. team's played throughout the Nations League, it's a lot of players that are constant call-ups with a national team that I think should be uncomfortable going forward, that their spot should feel in question with how poorly the U.S. played this Nations League against Panama and Canada. Cole says Quinn over Daniel Gosling for his starting 11. Brandon says bad luck for U22 Sully to not start over Indy. Jillian says also Rick was very aggressive on the drum at the end. Gotta love it. I think one of his teammates mentioned that. Haha. Yeah, it was Quinn Sullivan. He mentioned it, said that Andrew Rick needs to get better rhythm because I think Andrew Rick was a little bit nervous, just going way too fast there with the beat. But hey, look, I respect it. John says, hey, John, thanks for checking in. Says United States men's national team look like the 2024 Union. Yeah, it's a really good point. A lot of players on that team look like they don't care. Look like, hey, look, I play for a top team in Europe, or I play in Europe, and that should justify a spot. Yeah, a lot of questions need to be asked of these players, and we'll see what Pochettino does the next international break with players that he does call up, that he doesn't call up. I think Paxton Aronson was robbed. He should have been called up this national team camp. Why you called up Giovanna makes no sense to me. A player that Pochettino said that's not fully fit because he's not playing. And if deciding a goalkeeper, you're going with somebody that's constantly playing, then one, why do we call up Matt Turner when his situation in England's not working out? Two, Reina's situation in Dortmund's not working out. So why do we call these guys up if they're not constantly playing? And you want players that are constantly playing at the national team. And so I'd be curious to see what happens with Matt Turner in the summertime. I think it could be a real possibility that he comes back to MLS. And we all know how well he played with New England Revolution, but then you're going to have some people saying, well, look at him. He failed in Europe and he should be playing in Europe. Well, look, couldn't get any starts. And it's partially his fault maybe because he wasn't as good as some of the other goalkeepers on that roster. But, at the same time, situations went against Matt Turner, and it's unfortunate for how his tenure in Europe's been going. Shaggy says after the last two games, every United States player position should be up for debate. Yeah, it should. And maybe that should be Blunder of the Week, obviously, honestly, for how poor the U.S. played during Nations League. But you had spoiled Blunder of the Week, Shaggy, earlier in the episode, talking about the expectation for what the issue was between João Klauss and Bradley Carnell. And so I really wish this was a moment where I was recording. I don't know if anybody has this. If you guys have seen this video on social media anywhere, I would love to give it a retweet or put it in the show description so people can go ahead and watch this. It definitely wasn't caught by the Apple TV cameras, but essentially the whistle blows. Bradley Carnell goes and shakes hands of the coaching staff of St. Louis City, shakes the hands of some players, and then you see João Klauss sprinting over, and then he bumps right into Bradley Carnell, and they start having a conversation. Things look like it starts to get heated, and you see some St. Louis City players just pull Klauss away from Bradley Carnell, and then Klauss goes straight down the tunnel. Such an odd situation, but yeah, totally uncalled for. So Klauss gets my Blunder of the Week.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, not a good moment at all. So concerning that. Why? I mean, yeah, it makes sense to me that you see reports that Bradley Carnell had lost the locker room in St. Louis City. And of course, there's going to be players that are upset with Bradley Carnell. Indiana Vasilev wasn't one of those players. But yeah, whether or not Klauss was one of those players who had an issue with Bradley Carnell, I mean, it still doesn't justify you going up to the coach, bumping them, and then just getting in his face and everything. It's like, you might have an issue with him, but that's not the way that you go about that. And now you make yourself look like a total jackass in front of all the fans that were there. It's like, you're not going to do anything, dude. Bumping into a coach and running your mouth, what's the point? And like I said, that's why Klauss gets Blunder of the Week. Shaggy says, yeah, I can't believe that Klauss didn't get a card for his behavior. I don't even know if the referee saw that, honestly. So again, if anybody has this video, if it's out there somewhere on social media, I would love to see it so I can include it in the show descriptions for people who did not see that moment. But I appreciate you guys joining the podcast. 117 people live on Twitter and YouTube with me. A lot of great comments. You guys made the show fly by, honestly. I thought this show would go by so slow. First time in a long time that I've done a solo episode. But you guys, the commenters, really made the show fly by. You guys are the best part about the show for Jose and I every time you guys check in. So if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow at Free Kick Pod, wherever you get your podcasts, The Free Kick. Check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Free Kick Pod. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out my writing, goals breakdown videos, or the podcast, you can go ahead and check out thefreekick.substack.com. And I'm not sure exactly what the plan is going to be this week. Usually Battered Herons have me on the show to do a match preview for the Philadelphia Union and Inter Miami. Maybe they asked me to come on, maybe not. I am going down to Fort Lauderdale. Hopefully I can get approved for that match. It's to be determined at the moment. So we'll see what happens with that for Inter Miami. But regardless if I get approved or not, definitely going down there. And if I got to watch the game from my hotel, then so be it. But a lot of people that I know that live down in the area that I want to go ahead and see. Happy to get away from some cold weather because it's so strange the weather we're having here. It was nice a few weeks ago, and now it's going back to super windy and chilly. And so it should be nice to go down to Fort Lauderdale. I know Kyle and Jillian Almany from the One Team We Agree On are also going down to that match. And so we'll definitely have content for you guys, whether it be from the stadium or whether it be from articles and the goals breakdown videos and just everything else and the podcast. We'll definitely have you covered for the Inter Miami game. But again, I appreciate you guys checking out the podcast tonight. You guys are the best part of the show. You guys are phenomenal. And again, let's get to 500 followers on YouTube. I do believe we can do that by the end of the season. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.